You're listening to Dodge Movie Podcast. Your hosts are Christy and Mike Dodge, the founders of Dodge Media Productions. We produce films and podcasts, so this is a podcast about films. Join them as they share their passion for filmmaking.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Dodge Movie Podcast. This is episode 49. We're getting close to that big 50, and then after that will be a big 52, which means we've been doing this for 52 weeks. What do you think of them apples?
That's like a whole year, right?
It is, yes. Today we are talking about what we did on our holiday. It's a 2014 film that stars Rosamund? Is that how you say it?
I think Rosamund, yeah.
Rosamund Pike. That sounds like a Scottish name or Irish.
Yeah, I think she's English, but yeah.
David Tennant and our favorite, Billy Connolly.
And that's how we got to this film, because I was looking at his oeuvre and I saw this film and looked into it and decided to watch it years ago.
I was going to say, we watched it a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Has it been, you think it's been 2 years?
I bet it has.
Wow. Time flies, guys. Okay. The director is Andy Hamilton, and it's / Guy Jenkins. Oh, and little note, the writer is also listed as Andy Hamilton / Guy Jenkins. And I thought that the DGA looked down upon.
I've never heard of a slash. I've heard of the ampersand and an and, but not a slash.
Yeah, but I didn't think that they could share, because like the Coen brothers famously, like one of them writes it, one of them directs it, even though they both wrote and directed it.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I was shocked when I saw that.
Yeah. I don't recall ever seeing that before.
Yeah. Okay. So like I said, this is a 2014 movie that we watched a couple years ago. I believe it's available on Amazon Prime is maybe where we initially watched it.
Mm-hmm.
A family of 5 is off to Granddad's big 75th birthday party at an uncle's estate in rural Scotland. The parents are separated and hope that their 3 kids won't mention it to the extended family. The kids love and talk with and will do anything for their granddad. And so Granddad takes them off fishing, and sadness and comedy hijinks ensue, I guess would be safe to say, yes.
Right. Would that be drama hijinks? I don't know if hijinks can be anything but comedy.
Right. This one is listed as a comedy drama. There are no taglines, so we will just jump right into it. Mike, what is our pickup line that gets this movie going?
Becky, have a pee before we go and in the toilet this time.
This is a great scene. It's very reminiscent of that opening scene of Parenthood that we talked about.
Right.
Where every parent who has tried to coordinate leaving on a road trip, what you deal with, trying to pack and get the kids pottied, and you add into it that they're separated. We find out through, I believe in this first scene, the kids give us little nods.
Yes.
And my favorite is the oldest daughter who pulls out her notebook and says, okay, what lies do I have to tell? I think she says.
Yeah, something like that. What lies do I have to tell? It's really, I think, quite excellent example of show don't tell, because the fact that they're separated comes out throughout the acting and some of the dialogue, but you immediately can see this tension between Rosamund Pike and David Tennant's characters. And then when he goes to the neighbor to get keys because they've lost the keys to the house or the car, one of the two.
The house, so they can't lock up the house, yes.
The neighbor's just scathing hatred of him shows us that, oh, okay, there's something going on here. This isn't just the normal irritation of, oh, I have to keep a spare set of keys because you keep losing yours, but just she obviously is not even remotely happy with David Tennant's character.
Yeah, it's almost like she looks over at the wife like, can I give him the keys? And then the wife, Rosamund Pike, gives her a nod. So she has told her, whatever he says, do not give him the keys to the house.
Right.
The kids it's on the border. One of our pet peeves is children who are basically written by adults. And so they sound like adults. And children should sound like children. And you can have them once in a while, I think, kind of do an adult quip if it lands. But like I said, one of our pet peeves is the kids who just sound a little bit too adult. And this I felt was just writing that line, but I get it worked, I guess, because it didn't annoy me.
I think it worked for me because of those child actors. They, I think, did a fantastic job delivering those lines in a way that felt believable. But the star of the film has to be the actress who played the oldest daughter.
Mm-hmm.
She really did a fantastic job. And I think that character is really, in some sense, the character that the audience is rooting for, because she is, in a sense, the victim of her parents' hijinks. And we see throughout the film, as it slowly comes unraveled, that David Tennant's character of Doug has cheated on Abby. So that's a thing, and now Abby is dating again. And so you see the kids in between, in a sense, but the younger siblings are a little bit less aware of it. Great acting, I think, by Billy Connolly. I think he did a fantastic job in this. And there's a scene where the oldest daughter, I think her name is Becky, but maybe that's the younger daughter.
I can't remember.
But the oldest daughter, she is in his basement room, his domain, and you can see them as they're going through like this old album, and he sees what we find out is his brother who died in the war. And the way that he moves on, just kind of summarily moves on in the conversation, doesn't even attempt to be subtle about it, is I think how an adult would treat a child. But in general, it shows that she's more aware than maybe her parents think of what's going on, that is.
Mm-hmm. So the oldest daughter's name is Lottie.
Oh, yeah, Lottie, yes.
And she's portrayed by Amelia Jones, who was the lead in Coda, the film we saw.
She was the lead in Coda?
Yeah.
The Children of Deaf Adults?
Yes.
Irma Gersh. Well, I think she did well in there, too. Good job on her. I also saw she was in a Netflix show called Lock and Key. And I might have to check it out because I think she did a fantastic job.
Yeah, she did. And, as we were talking and I was commenting on the kids, I realized maybe the kids needed to appear a little bit smarter because of what they do. And, we've told you guys that we're not going to claim spoiler alerts. It's, we tell you the movies ahead of time. So I'm just going to speak freely. These kids decide to help their grandfather with his final wish. He said when he wants to die, he wants a Viking funeral. He knows his sons. He knows there's going to be fighting. And he mentions to them, like, it's just not worth it. And there's a very poignant scene. In fact, it's the quote I chose for our show notes. He says, it's not about all of what everyone is fighting about, all that stupid stuff. It's about the time that you spent with people when you were here. And, it's about your family and it's about your friends and the things that you care deeply for. That's what it's all about. And so he says, I don't want all the fighting. And the kids, when Grandpa does die on the beach, they take it upon themselves to give him a Viking funeral, which entails a lot. Like they had to build a raft. They had to get it to go out.
Right.
They had to set, they had to put, kerosene on it so it would catch on fire and burn hot enough to destroy a body.
Right.
So, that's even just moving a dead body is, and their grandfather, that's a very adult, I don't know if I could do it.
That's a really good point. I hadn't thought of that the writers had to establish that they were, in a certain sense, beyond their age in order for them to tackle that activity, which, I'm just thinking many adults would be leery of touching a dead body, let alone that of someone that you loved. It would just be very, very difficult. So I think, showing Lottie's character as being, in some sense, beyond her years. And I would also think that given that her parents were fighting and splitting up and all that, she maybe had to take on some of those adult responsibilities because her parents were too busy fighting with each other. Mm-hmm. And we see that in this kind of opening trip when they drive from London to Scotland. And David Tennant's character of Doug says, oh, we have plenty of time. And Rosamund's character of Abby is like, no, we don't. A classic fight, right? And you can see how they polarize. And the kids are like, oh, are you going to argue? Oh, we're not arguing. We're just discussing. And to me, that shows that maybe she did have to step into that role a bit more. And The Notebook, right, also shows that. But then as we move north into Scotland and we see the rest of the family, Doug's brother, Gavin, and his wife, I think Margaret is her name, she's holding on incredibly tightly, right? So we see that this family, perhaps because the patriarch is ill, but they're all very white-knuckly type A types. And so Lottie's character of writing these things down actually fits in well. We see, and there's this party that they're throwing for him. And at the time, again, spoiler alert, they thought he'd be there for it. It was a birthday party. And obviously they knew it was going to be one of his last birthdays. But it's exactly the thing that he doesn't want, right? And so he takes the kids to go fishing instead of being around for all of these preparations that he really has no interest in.
Yeah, you almost wonder, did he know?
So it's great that you say that, because the first time through I didn't catch that. But then the second time through, he's about to leave and the sons say, well, should you go? And he says, don't worry, I've done a risk assessment. And then as he goes out the door, he leans back in and says, no, I haven't. And
he's so great in this role.
Oh, it's fantastic.
Oh.
But to support that point further, when he sees his lesbian ostrich-raising friend, she says, how are you feeling? And he says, oh, this is a good day. And she says, you're such a crap actor. So that says that someone who knows him very well knows that he's not doing well.
Yeah. And he's the type of grandpa like you would hope for. You know, I wanted to say the way that we're talking about this, it's in no way like Weekend at Bernie's. The kids don't drag, you know, it's not that kind of comedy.
Oh, no.
It's a very sweet film, but not saccharine sweet. But it's just the way that dealing with these big life issues, these kids and this obviously loving grandpa, he takes them out, he lets them drive the car. You know, he's that kind of grandpa that appropriately lets you kind of break some rules, but in a semi-safe way, maybe.
I will be honest, I aspire to be that kind of granddad.
Sure.
Yeah, the comedy is more, I would consider to be subtle. And I don't want to say British because that would involve the English, because there's this great line where he says, you're so English, you're practically French. I love that line. That's a great line. And he makes fun of him. He says, well, you know, there's always, everyone swears in London. And when you're Scottish, you have a movable heart. So it's got a lot of that kind of wordplay sense of humor, I think, as opposed to, like you said, not a lot of corpse humor like Weekend at Bernie's.
Yeah, no, it's very, I love the way they handled this topic. And in a way, I also appreciated, well, you've got the beautiful Scottish countryside that we see again that is just, lovely. I want to go someday. And then how they handle when the grandpa does die, I thought was really well done, because it's cute. He kind of plays a practical joke on the kids. They bury him in the sand like kids love to do. I've been buried by a child before. So he pretends to be dead. And I wonder, in a way, was he testing them to see, like, what will they do?
Oh, that's an interesting thought. I hadn't given that thought. But if we go down the road that he knew he wasn't doing well, right?
Yeah.
Or did he like struggle and actually make it and then not make it the next time?
The next time. But what they do is they let us know. I think he has a conversation with the kids where he talks about his brother, because I think the kids kind of say, we didn't know you had a brother. And he explains that he died in the war. So he's sitting on the beach and he's watching the kids playing. And then all of a sudden his brother walks up and he says, you want to go for a swim with me? And he's like, yeah. And so it's really subtle, but it's like, oh, I think he's dying, because basically his brother has come kind of for him.
Yeah.
And then the little boy puts a hermit crab on him, and that's when they kind of discover that he is, and he's like, oh, he's just playing a prank on us.
Yeah, I thought it was very subtly done with the brother coming back, because the first time I saw the film, I didn't understand. It took me a bit. Oh, right. He passed away. Right.
So there's almost like some parallel storytelling going on, and we go back and forth from the kids on the beach and kind of what they're doing. They're putting together the raft, the foreshadowing of him teaching them to drive. They get in the truck and they drive the truck, and the older daughter, Lottie, her feet don't reach. And so the brother has to get down on the floor and push the pedals, and she steers. And you know, you're scared because there's 3 small children. Lottie is what, like maybe 12, like 10 maybe?
I was going to go 10.
Yeah, so you've got 3 kids under the age of 10, and they're going to drive this car. And I think, doesn't she say, like, like the kids paid attention and they knew that the tide was going to go in. And so they needed to get the truck kind of close enough to the water, or in the shallow part of the water, in order to bring the raft close enough, because 3 kids can't drag this raft, so they use the car. So like I said, like you pointed out, we have to show that the kids paid attention. They listened to his stories.
Right.
And they can plan and execute. They do. Like, they execute a darn good Viking funeral, if I say so myself.
And then in the middle of that, right, Lottie runs back for help, only to find her father and uncle arguing about some stupid thing about the party. And that dovetails with what Granddad Gordy had said about people just arguing about stuff that doesn't matter. And when he was in his domain, Gordy, and talking to Lottie, he showed her this kind of brooch. It's a thing that you would, affix your tartan on. And it looks old. And then later on in the film, when they mentioned that to give him a proper Viking funeral, they included some of his favorite things, including that. The older brother, Gavin, loses his mind. It's worth 15,000 pounds. And then the younger brother, Doug, is like, wow, that's all you ever cared about. And it actually brings to pass exactly what Gordy didn't want. And you also see, though, that there's this subplot with Gavin's wife, Margaret, obviously being under tremendous stress and having some mental health issues. Because, again, this is kind of, in a sense, almost a British sense of humor, but it's very understated. Whilst Gavin is yelling at the police for not properly investigating Gordy's demise, behind him on the television is the YouTube video of the security footage of his wife losing her mind and tossing this giant pumpkin at another woman in the grocery store. And I thought that was really subtle, but very funny to have, the contrast between the two things. So you see that there's that tension already in the family, right? We never really understand what Gavin does, but the estate is huge. It's obvious that money is important to him, but that he works very hard to try to keep up with that. So there's a lot of forces at play, not just the divorce.
And actually, when the daughter runs back and sees her dad and his brother fighting, she also overhears her mom confess to having an affair with another man.
Right. She's currently dating Wallace, which leads to the great line from Doug, does he have a dog named Gromit?
So she's upset. And so she runs back to her brother and sister, and they're kind of like, wait, where are the grown-ups? And she's like, no, we're doing this. So like you said, we are rooting for Lottie because the toil that she's been going through, and she carries out her grandfather's basically last wish. Yeah, it's sweet. The kids decorate the raft with like stuff that they had found and brought and were there with them, as well as you said, Lottie brings back, I thought they were saying a brooch. So I couldn't understand why Billy would have a brooch. So thank you for explaining that.
I have to say, from a production standpoint, obviously Billy Connolly was not burnt alive on that raft. It was a prop of some sort. But how did they get the raft to go out to sea, right? Because I would think often the wind comes in. But so props to the props department.
I think they were all tight shots, so you could cheat it.
Possibly they did, but I thought there was a shot where we could see it on fire and floating out to sea.
Well, when the brothers finally figure out and they get in the car and they race there, it's so far in the distance that could have been in post.
Yeah, that definitely could have been. And I thought that was good visual storytelling because you see Gavin wearing his very traditional formal Scottish attire, the Bonnie Prince Charlie jacket, the kilt, the hose and everything. And he's just powering up this sand dune for his father. So that to me showed that when push came to shove, he did love his father.
They both did. I think they showed that.
In their way, right? They were both, but I mean, they're flawed characters. They have their own problems. But I thought that was good, though, to show the difference between kind of what we had seen before, where he was a bit of a douche nozzle. Let's just be honest. Yeah. Oh, David Tennant. So I don't want to jump ahead necessarily to the driving review, but he is a horrific father in certain ways.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a minute. I thought the scene when the kids come back and they explain that grandpa is dead and this is what we did, the mom tries to get out of the littlest daughter what happened, and the dad is talking to the older two. David Tennant's talking to the older two, and the back and forth between that, it's a very funny scene, and the brother's on the phone. And so it's this, just chaos that is going on as these adults are trying to piece together, wait, what are you saying you guys just did? Because it is hard to fathom.
Because we as the audience have seen what went down.
Right.
But then you start thinking, well, how would a 10-year-old report this?
Right.
It may not make a lot of sense. Plus, it's such an abnormal situation. Who would, if granddad died, put him on a raft, light him on fire, and push him out in the North Atlantic?
Right.
No one.
And the littlest one tells the story like littles do.
Oh, yeah. Great writing.
You know, just so slow. And then we found a hermit crab. And the mom's just like,
Right.
okay, what happened next, though? What happened after that? Like, please get to the
Yes.
part where you lit Grandpa on fire. And she's like, well, first we had some lunch. And she's
Yeah.
just like, please. You know, it's a good scene. I like that one. Celia Imrie plays Agnes Chisholm. And she comes, and it's unclear whether she's like social services or she's a policewoman. And so she interviews the kids, and there's a question that the kids are going to be removed from their parents. And I couldn't tell, is that part of like some divorce like proceedings that they were dealing with that? Or do you think that is just, oh no, these children have killed their grandfather. We must investigate whether they are in an unfit home.
Yes, I think the state would have concerns because at the time there was no corpse and they didn't know what had happened. So it seems like it's perhaps normal to have children's services involved until they did sort out what had happened.
But it wouldn't have happened that same day that it was reported. That would be something that would be part of an investigation ongoing. But I guess for time we had to, by the premise, by the bit, Christy, don't get too bogged down.
Yes, but I would also say if you're interviewing children whose granddad died, perhaps murdered by a hobo or something, maybe an evolved civilization would have somebody delicate do that instead of the regular rank and file police, who, to be quite honest, did not come across as particularly competent throughout this film.
Right. So just one last note, I really appreciated there were thistles in the floral arrangements for the party. I noticed some of the bowls and the cups that they were using early in the film had like thistles on them. And as we know, thistle is it official or unofficial flower?
I think it's quite official.
Of Scotland. So I just love those little touches to just remind us, yes, we are here in Scotland in this film. And so would this be considered a romantic comedy? Because
no.
Yeah, because David Tennant does kind of come around and realize maybe he needs to think of things a little bit differently, but it's not like the wife that does it. It's kind of his kids and the fact his dad died.
Yeah, I don't, and I really don't think that there's any sort of love triangle there.
But do we have a smoochie?
Smoochy.
We do have a smoochie. It's actually Gavin's son smooches the girl fiddler after the party. And of course, when you spend that amount of money on a party, you have it even if the guest of honor dies, right? As one of the characters says, terribly bad luck to die right before your birthday party. And so...
Although, how cool is it that you go out on the day you came? I think that's like, I would absolutely love that as a bookend. I would love to, well, maybe I wouldn't love, but to go around to the cemetery. Like, how often does that happen that someone dies on their birthday?
I would say 1 out of 365 times would be my initial guess.
I think that's a cool.
I think it's less. I think people they're really excited about the birthday, hold on till the day after. But yes, that is a fantastic premise.
It's like perfectly 75 years to
Okay. Okay, now I'm seeing it. Jim Carrey plays a guy who's obsessed with that very topic. And as he's doing research, he encounters Marissa Tomei, whose older relative has recently deceased on the birthday. Oh, look at this. It writes itself.
Why Marissa Tomei? Am I missing something?
I don't know. It just came into my head.
I thought you were referencing another movie. I thought you were doing the Spotless Mind movie with meets,
Yeah, no, in improv, right. I've learned to just go with it.
Okay, sorry. Yes, and.
Right.
Is there head trauma in the beginning, setting up the party?
I didn't see any head trauma.
Okay, so no head trauma in this film.
I have to say, this may become a more regular part of the podcast because I'm learning more. Shout out to lead costume designer Miriam about the clothing aspect. So the tartan that Gavin wears is appropriate. They're McLeod's, and so that's the tartan that he wears. So tip of the cap again to the costume department. I do like how they did a subtle touch to show how uptight Gavin is when they're having a little game of soccer football amongst the family. Gavin hands out little mesh red vests to distinguish the family. There's 4 people playing. How hard could it be to know who's on your team? Right? You know these people.
Yeah.
So I thought that was funny, very uptight. I did have one question, though. In the opening scene, Rosamund Pike is wearing this blue and white horizontal striped jumper that looks like Mr. Smee from Peter Pan. I'm not sure what we were supposed to draw from that. That seemed, I thought she was more put together. She would have, that just seemed a little off to me.
I think this is where you're not gay enough. It was just a cute outfit.
Oh, okay. All right. Fair enough.
Right. Okay. So now we are to our big driving review.
Okay. So as far as the vehicles go, just the vehicles themselves, the family, both Doug and Abby and their kids, they ride in a Toyota Verso. It was brand new at the time that the film was shot. So the intent there was to show that they had bought this new car, even though now the family was splitting apart. So that was again, a little bit of kind of the props, the set that was indicating that something was going on there, right? 2 people trying to desperately cling to keep the family together. Hey, let's get a new car. Billy Connolly's truck, his pickup, was a 2001 Mitsubishi Triton. And we also talked about this in Restless Natives. There's a lot of these Scottish movies have import Japanese vehicles, and I was curious if that's true. Is it because the Scots don't have quite as much money, so instead of Land Rovers, they drive imported Japanese vehicles? I just thought that was interesting, that it was a Mitsubishi truck. But the atrocious parenting comes from when the character of Doug, played by David Tennant, not saying the actor himself would ever do this, falls asleep while driving at highway speeds. And so
very dangerous.
The youngest daughter is taking over the steering as he wakes up. Very dangerous. Very dangerous. I don't know what he was thinking. That's horrible.
Which that's a little, I don't know. Is it a cheap joke? It's kind of.
Yeah, a little bit.
Because there's no way that daughter could keep it on the road. So, I mean, yeah, but.
And I think she would instead shout, Daddy, Daddy, you're asleep.
Right. And I think if they just had it be a little bit quicker, like maybe his head bobbed and she leaned over and I don't know.
Right.
But not to get too nitpicky. Sorry, right. Filmmakers.
Yes. But that's just really stuck out as like an incredibly dangerous situation.
Yes, very. Oh, and the wife, like when she wakes up and she was like, I was driving or something. She's like, you fell asleep. Like, and he's like, not for very long. And it was like, yeah, a little bit. You could have killed 5 people.
A little bit.
Yeah. Not advisable, everybody.
Yeah, please, if you're nodding off, pull over. And come to a full and complete stop.
Let's be safe. All right. Shall we go to the numbers?
Let's go to the numbers.
Okay. So like I said, this film was made in 2014. The budget was 3.5 Great British pounds, and it made worldwide 10.7. So pretty good.
Yeah, like it's an excellent 3X film and a financial hit.
Yeah. It scored 6.9 on IMDb, which I think is, we've talked about IMDb is pretty low. I thought this was fascinating. Rotten Tomatoes gave it 73% and the audience gave it 71%. So, audience and critics alike love this film. I would say that's a love at even 70%. It's an hour and 35 minutes, rated PG-13. So the whole family, actually, this is a really cute family film. I think this could be watched by all. And especially if maybe you need to discuss the themes of death with some kids. This might be, depending, maybe not let a 5-year-old watch this. But if you're dealing with like a 10 and up age range, this, I think, could help.
I do like their depiction. Like I said, that the imagery of Fraser showing up to go swimming is very subtle, and they show the kids dealing with it in a matter-of-fact way.
Yeah, nothing is gross. Nothing is, it's tasteful, yet realistic. Realistic in the sense that there's no magical kind of, like you said, aside from the brother coming.
And ultimately hopeful. Because the family does recover and they have the party, and the final scene where they're giving kind of a eulogy for him is nice. I think that's a good point. This is perhaps a good film for the 10-year-old to be introduced to the concept that granddad might not make it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is one of our faves. When we knew we were going to talk about Scottish films, both of us just said, yes, we have to absolutely talk about this one. And I think even in a budget of 3.5, I think that qualifies as possibly even an indie movie.
Oh, yeah,
so
I didn't realize the budget was that low. It doesn't look it.
So it totally fits in our indie movie love. Some of the filming locations, obviously, all over Scotland. I just love the different names. Airlock, Wester Ross, Scotland is one of the places. Red Point Beach, Wester Ross, Scotland.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting because, like, is that like city, county, and then country?
Yeah, I think the thing in the middle is the equivalent of a county. It's like a shire
So it's
or a county,
Okay.
I think.
And then Glasgow.
Glasgow.
Oh, yeah. Somebody said it wrong last night and Glasgow.
We're heckling.
Glasgow.
It was Phil Keegan.
That's right.
Coogan? However he says his name. Let's
It's only
mispronounce
fair.
his
It's
name.
only fair.
Phil Keegan.
Yeah. No way to know. Let's see. It was nominated for Best Actor, David Tennant, and Best Feature Film for the BAFTAs. So that's a big win, I would say, for this film. And then it got Best Film of the Year. Or no, it was nominated for Best Film of the Year in the Valladolid Film Festival. And it won. I didn't understand this. It was listed under this movie, but it said that this film won for British Actor of the Year, Rosamund Pike, for Gone Girl.
Wait, what?
Wait, why is that in this part of IMDb?
But I don't know she was in Gone Girl, was she?
She was.
Oh.
Yes.
All right,
she was the female lead.
It's misfiled.
She was the girl that was gone.
Really?
Yeah. You see, you haven't watched that because it's a little bit more of a thriller.
Yeah.
Yeah.
it has zero Billy Connolly in it.
Right. All right, guys, let's do some wrapping up here. Remember, if we get to 25 reviews, I will post a picture of Mike in his kilt on our wedding day. So please go to your favorite podcast platform and give us some reviews. The 25 that I'm looking for is on Apple, but if you do it on another platform, shoot me a text or an email or put it on our social media and let me know that you did it, and I'll consider it as part of the goal to 25. And if you guys want to see Mike's sexy legs in that kilt.
Okay, but it does not count if Lee does 24 reviews.
It counts to me.
Okay, Lee, it does count. 24 reviews from you would count.
No, we have 16, so we only need 9 more.
Okay, 9 more. All right. Well, that's
so if
good.
he wants to create 9 aliases.
Or has friends and family.
Or gets the rest of our listening audience to do it.
Right.
So I'm telling you, he's a handsome fella. You guys want to see this pic. Also, even though the holidays have passed, if you are interested in getting a sneak peek at the films that we are going to discuss this year, just shoot me an email at christy@dodgemediaproductions.com. That email is in the show notes. I will send you our PDF that lists out all of the films that we're going to be talking about this year. If you want to give us a call and just let us know what you think, if there's any questions you have or comments you want to make, our phone number is 971-245-4148. Feel free to use that and we may play your clip on the air. Thank you, everybody, for all of your listening, and enjoy these Scottish films. We've got 3 down, 2 more to go, and we will see you next week when we're talking about
salmon fishing in the Yemen.
Thank you very much. And don't ever forget,
Dodges never stop, and neither do the movies.
Thanks for listening to Dodge Movie Podcast with Christy and Mike Dodge of Dodge Media Productions. To find out more about this podcast and what we do, go to dodgemediaproductions.com. Subscribe, share, leave a comment, and tell us what we should watch next. Dodges never stop, and neither do the movies.